30 shards of fury sliced through my chest the moment my husband ordered me out of the car, and in that breath I knew the storm outside was nothing compared to the one he had unleashed inside me. My name is Clara Whitford, and at 52 years old, I never expected my life to collapse on a forgotten highway drenched in cold mist. The sky above the Colorado mountains had turned the color of bruised steel, heavy with rain, when Leonard slowed his luxury sedan beside an abandoned diner. He did not look at me. He simply said, "Get out. Walk home. Maybe that will remind you who controls this family." I felt the ground tilt under my feet. Not from fear. Not anymore. But from the recognition that this moment was the final page of a story he thought he had written. He had no idea I had already begun writing my own. I stepped out slowly, closing the door with a softness that made him glance at me through the mirror. He expected tears. Expected apologies. Expected the same obedient woman who, for decades, swallowed her heartbreak like medicine. Instead, I stared back at him with a calm that cracked his confidence. The engine roared. Gravel sprayed. Leonard vanished down the road, leaving me alone with nothing but the rising wind and the throb of freedom in my chest. But I was not alone. I slid my hand into my coat pocket and tapped twice on my phone. That was the signal. Seconds later, headlights appeared from behind the diner, slicing through the gloom. A black Chevy rolled forward, and out stepped Jonah, my brother, my anchor, my quiet storm. He held an umbrella in one hand and a thermos of chamomile tea in the other. "You good?" he asked. "Boy steady." "Yes," I said. "Better than I've been in years." He glanced down the road where Leonard had disappeared. "Did he say the line?" I nodded. "He said it. Every poisonous word." "Good," Jonah murmured. "Then we have everything we need." We climbed into his truck, and I sank into the seat, letting the warmth from the vents thaw the parts of me Leonard had frozen long ago. The plan had taken 8 months, 8 months of gathering documents, recording conversations, tracking the money he thought I was too clueless to understand. Leonard believed gray hair meant weakness, that a woman past 50 was desperate to cling to any scrap of affection. What he never realized was that wisdom sharpens with time, and survival carves strength into bone. As Jonah drove us toward the cabin we had prepared, the first drops of rain splattered against the windshield. My phone buzzed. Not with panic, panic belonged to Leonard now, but with purpose. It was a message from Sylvia, the forensic accountant who had helped me piece together the truth. He transferred another $20,000 this afternoon. Offshore. Documented. Another message followed from Miriam, my attorney. Emergency petition approved for tomorrow. Bring tonight's recording. Recording. Yes. The proof of what he'd just done. The world would hear the way he spoke to me. The contempt. The control. The cruelty wrapped in calm sentences. Jonah's hand tightened on the wheel as thunder rolled across the sky. He really thinks you're walking home in this. That's exactly what he thinks. He exhaled, a slow, simmering release of frustration. 3 decades of watching him shrink you. Make you doubt yourself. He has no idea what's coming. He will, I said. Tomorrow. We took the forest road, avoiding the main highway in case Leonard doubled back. My pulse no longer raced. Instead, a strange softness spread through me, relief, resolve, the quiet power of someone who had finally stopped waiting to be saved and chosen to save herself. The cabin came into view, a small, warm refuge nestled beneath towering pines. Inside, a change of clothes waited, along with printed records, screenshots, and a binder labeled simply, C. Whitford vs. L. Whitford. Jonah parked and turned to me. Once we get inside, tea, shower, then sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a war. I shook my head gently. Tomorrow is going to be justice. Rain erupted the moment we stepped onto the porch, a downpour so fierce it shook the roof. I watched it cascade off the edges like a curtain falling on the final act of a play I never agreed to perform in. Inside the cabin, the air smelled like cedar and lavender. Safe. Steady. Mind. I changed into warm clothes, placed my soaked coat over the chair, and sat at the small wooden table. Then I pressed play on the recording. Leonard's voice filled the room, sharp, dismissive, dripping with entitlement. You think you deserve answers? You think you have a right to know where the money goes? I earn it. I decide. You exist because I allow it. The words sliced, but they no longer pierced. They were evidence now, not wounds. My phone buzzed again. Jonah peeked in from the kitchen. More from Sylvia? I checked the screen and nodded. Yes. She found another shell company. The judge is going to love this. Jonah leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Clara, when this is over, you're going to have a whole new life. I met his eyes. I already do. Outside, lightning split the sky open. Inside, I felt a spark ignite in me, a spark I thought age had dimmed. But storms don't weaken fire. They feed it. Tomorrow Leonard would wake expecting the same submissive wife he'd left stranded in the rain. Tomorrow he would learn what happens when a woman he underestimated decides she's done being controlled, and this was only the beginning. As I settled into the cabin's quiet embrace, the storm outside felt like a cleansing roar, stripping away every lie he had built around me. I breathed slowly, realizing this was the first night in decades I was truly safe. Tomorrow would not break me. Tomorrow would free me. The storm didn't let up through the night. It hammered the roof in relentless waves, but inside the cabin I felt something I hadn't felt in more than 3 decades, safety. The kind of safety that settles into your bones and whispers, you finally chose yourself. I woke before dawn to the scent of coffee. Jonah stood by the counter, sleeves rolled up, steam curling around his face like morning fog. You didn't sleep much, he said without turning. He always knew things without asking. I slept enough, I answered, stretching the stiffness from my shoulders. Today matters too much. He handed me a mug and nodded toward the binder on the table. Miriam's already sent updates. Leonard moved another 10,000 before midnight. He's scrambling. A strange calm washed over me. For years, his financial decisions dictated my life, what I could buy, where I could go, how much I could breathe. Now every desperate move he made only tightened the noose around his own lies. Jonah leaned on the counter. Clara, you're ready for this, right? Truly ready? Courtrooms, questions, confrontation, it's a lot. I met his eyes. I've been ready since the first night he made me doubt my own memory. He exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of the counter the way he used to grip the steering wheel whenever Leonard barked orders at me in front of him. Then let's finish this. We packed the evidence, recordings, printouts, photographs, bank statements with numbers that once overwhelmed me but now fueled me. The storm had eased into a soft rain, the sky bruised purple as dawn crept over the mountains. Nature itself felt like it was holding its breath. As we drove toward the courthouse, my phone lit up again and again. First from Leonard, 12 missed calls. Then from his mother, Helen. She'd left a single voicemail, her voice trembling with righteous fury. What did you do to my son? He said you ran away and are trying to ruin his reputation. Clara, call me back. This behavior is beneath you. Jonah snorted. Beneath you? Lady, please. I silenced the phone. Let them talk. Let them spin. Today the truth would speak louder than every lie he'd built around me. Just before reaching town, Jonah took a side road and parked behind a small cafe. Miriam waited for us under the awning, umbrella in hand, hair perfectly pinned, lips sharp with determination. You look steady, she said, scanning my face. I feel steady. Good. Leonard hired a new legal team this morning. That means he's panicking. She opened the door for us. Let's go win. The courthouse loomed ahead, columns tall, granite darkened by rain, steps slick with drizzle. Reporters clustered at the bottom like vultures waiting for movement. Keep your chin up, Miriam said softly. Do not let him see fear. I didn't plan to. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed over polished floors. Courtroom B was already filling. And there, sitting beside 2 attorneys in suits too expensive for their integrity, was Leonard. He looked smaller than I remembered. Wrinkled shirt. Red-rimmed eyes. That perfect hair, The one he spent 30 minutes sculpting every morning, now slightly out of place when he saw me walk in, his expression shifted from exhaustion to indignation. "Clara," he hissed under his breath as I passed. "Don't do this. You're blowing everything out of proportion." I didn't pause. Didn't blink. Didn't let him reclaim even an ounce of space inside me. I simply walked to my seat and placed the binder in front of me like armor. The judge entered. "We are here today for an emergency hearing concerning financial tampering, emotional abandonment, and illegal asset concealment." Leonard's attorney shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is a misunderstanding. Mr. Whitford would never." "You may sit down," the judge said firmly. "We will review the evidence." Miriam pressed play on her tablet. Leonard's voice spilled into the room, cruel, controlled, dripping arrogance. "Walk home. Maybe then you'll learn who controls this family." I watched the judge's mouth flatten into a hard line. The recording continued. "You have no right to question my financial decisions. I earn it. I decide. You're lucky I let you stay home and waste money on useless errands." Leonard stood abruptly. "Your Honor, this recording is taken out of context." "Sit," the judge commanded, her voice cutting like steel. "Context doesn't rescue that tone." My heart pounded as Miriam presented the documents. Transfers. Shell companies. Emails full of financial manipulation. Photos Jonah had captured from security cameras. Then came the final blow, the offshore account Sylvia uncovered. The judge tapped her pen against the table. "Mr. Whitford, did you move significant funds without your wife's knowledge?" Leonard forced a thin, trembling smile. "I run the household finances. She doesn't understand business." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Whitford, the year is not 1960. That excuse no longer works." A quiet ripple of laughter spread through the courtroom. Leonard's face went scarlet. "Your Honor," Miriam said, rising, "we request immediate freezing of all marital assets, exclusive residence for Mrs. Whitford, and a restraining order." Leonard slammed his hand on the table. "Restraining order? Against me? She's the one who ran away. She ran because you left her in an isolated area during a storm," Miriam interrupted. "She ran because she feared for her safety." Leonard scoffed. "Oh, please, she wasn't in danger." The judge fixed him with an icy stare. "And how would you know? You drove away." Silence swallowed the room. "Request granted," the judge said finally. Everything inside me softened, like a fist unclenching after 30 years of tension, but it wasn't over. As we left the courtroom, I heard Leonard's voice behind me, soft, poisonous, familiar. "You think you've won, Clara? You think this ends here?" I turned slowly. "No. It doesn't end here. It ends when every woman like me learns she doesn't have to stay." Something flickered in his eyes, fear, maybe. Or the realization that the woman he abandoned in the rain was no longer his to control. Outside, the storm had finally passed. The clouds cracked open, revealing a pale stretch of blue. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward, questions exploding in every direction. "Mrs. Whitford, are you pressing charges? Do you plan to divorce him? Is it true he had offshore accounts?" I inhaled deeply, letting the cool air settle in my lungs. Then I spoke, not for Leonard, not for the cameras, but for every woman who had stood in the rain believing she was powerless. "You can walk away," I said. "Even after 30 years. Even after they convince you that you can't. You can walk away, and you can win." The cameras flashed. My voice didn't waver, and for the first time in my life, the world listened. The courthouse doors had barely swung shut behind me when the weight of everything hit, not crushing, not suffocating, but strangely clarifying. For the first time in years, my footsteps were my own. No man's shadow trailed behind me. No condescending voice measured my worth. The rain-washed air tasted sharper, cleaner, like the world itself had shifted an inch to make room for the woman I was becoming. Jonah guided me through the crowd with one hand on my back. He was quiet, but his silence wasn't worry, it was pride. "You handled that like a warrior," he finally said once we reached the truck. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I didn't feel like one. Not the whole time. That's the trick, he said. Courage doesn't feel like courage when you're living it. We drove away from the courthouse, the reporters fading into the distance like a memory already losing color. But my phone didn't stop vibrating. Leonard's name lit up the screen again and again, calls, texts, voicemails piling like debris from a storm. Jonah reached over and turned the phone face down. You don't need his voice poisoning the first hour of your freedom. He was right. Let Leonard scream into the void. His outrage was nothing compared to the evidence stacked against him. Still, a small part of me trembled with the leftover echo of the woman I used to be, the woman who apologized for taking up space, for speaking too loudly, for simply existing outside the lines he drew. I pressed my hand to my chest. Why does part of me still feel guilty? Jonah gave a sad, half-knowing smile. Because he trained you to feel that way. But training isn't destiny. I stared out the window as the town blurred into tall pines. Training wasn't destiny. I repeated it silently until the knot in my chest loosened. We didn't go back to the cabin. Not yet. Instead, we drove to Sylvia's office, a small, unimpressive building that hid a mind sharp enough to dismantle an empire. Her lights were already on despite the early hour. Inside, papers were spread across every surface. Sylvia stood at the center of the chaos like a general mapping a battlefield. You're early, she said, pushing her glasses up. Good. You'll want to see this. She handed me a stack of printouts, wire transfers, timestamps, signatures I recognized all too well. But these were different. They showed money Leonard had moved long before I ever suspected anything. How far does this go? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. For years, she replied. Maybe 5. I sank into a chair. 4 years. That meant while I was attending charity luncheons and planning anniversaries, he had been planning a life without me. Look at this one, Sylvia said, tapping a page. See the amount? 50,000. Disguised as a business investment, but the receiving account belongs to a woman in Arizona. A woman? I asked slowly. Based on the address? Yes. I swallowed the rising sting, not of heartbreak, but humiliation. How many lies had he stacked beneath our marriage before I even began to question him? Jonah paced behind me, fists clenched. He's dirt. All the way through. No, Sylvia corrected sharply. Dirt washes off. What he did takes calculation. Her words chilled me more than any insult. She pointed to a different page. And here, another transfer, this time to a shell company with a Cayman address. It ties directly to one of his larger accounts. He thought he could hide this, but he underestimated how persistent middle-aged women can be when they've been wronged. Despite everything, I laughed. A sharp, unexpected laugh. He really did think I wouldn't fight. He thought you couldn't, Sylvia said. Men like him always underestimate women older than 50. They assume we're soft. Distracted. Desperate. They assume wrong. I nodded slowly. Let's bury him with facts. Already on it. Sylvia handed me a folder. This needs your signature. Once filed, investigators will have full legal access to his offshore history. A tremor ran through my hands as I signed. Not fear, anticipation. Sylvia closed the folder with a soft thud. By the way, the judge approved the house transfer motion. You're getting the home. My breath caught. He'll lose his mind. He already has, Jonah muttered, but Sylvia wasn't finished. One more thing, Clara. This came in this morning. She handed me a letter, official, stamped, cold. What is it? I asked. She folded her arms. A formal request. Several of his former clients want you to testify in their cases. They said you're the only one who ever saw the cracks up close. The only one he couldn't manipulate. My throat tightened. I had spent 30 years being silenced in my own home. Now strangers wanted my voice. I'll testify, I said without hesitation. Jonah placed a hand on my shoulder. You sure? Yes, I said. If I can stop even one woman from living the life I lived, then yes. Sylvia nodded approvingly. Good. Then let's prepare. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of signatures, statements, timelines, and explanations. Each piece of evidence built a wall between the woman I used to be and the woman I was becoming, but it wasn't until we were in the truck heading back to the cabin that my phone buzzed with the message that changed the tone of everything. It was from my neighbor, Mrs. Colton. Saw Leonard outside your house at dawn. He kicked your rose bushes. Then drove off fast. Is everything all right, dear? I stared at the message, my pulse shifting from calm to ice. Jonah caught the look. What is it? I handed him the phone. He muttered a low curse. He's unraveling. He's angry, I whispered. No, Jonah shook his head. He's losing control. And when men like him lose control, they get dangerous. His words clung to me like cold air. Leonard had always been calculated, but desperation might make him reckless. We pulled into the cabin driveway just as the sun broke through the clouds, scattering gold across the wet pines. But even the beauty couldn't quiet the tension buzzing inside me. Jonah locked the truck doors before we even got out. Until the restraining order is formally served, we stay alert. I'm not afraid of him anymore, I said softly. Jonah looked at me with a mixture of grief and pride. Not being afraid doesn't mean not being careful. Inside, I set my binder on the table and stood by the window, watching the last raindrops slide down the glass. Tomorrow would be bigger. Harder. More public, but tonight, I stood in a cabin filled with evidence, surrounded by truth, protected by family, and anchored by a strength I didn't know I still had. Leonard had left me in the rain believing I would crumble. Instead, he had awakened a woman who refused to be erased, and for the first time in more than 30 years, I felt something fierce, electric, and entirely mine, hope. The sun had barely risen when the knock came, 3 sharp raps that sliced through the silence of the cabin like warning shots. I sat up straight on the couch, heart thudding. Jonah, already awake with his boots on, moved to the door with the careful steps of a man who'd spent years training for moments like this. He looked through the peephole, then exhaled slowly. It's Miriam. He opened the door, and she slipped inside with the urgency of someone carrying news heavy enough to bend the air around her. We have a situation, she said without preamble, dropping her briefcase on the table. Her coat was soaked, her hair frizzed from the damp morning. Leonard tried to access one of the joint accounts at 6 this morning. When it failed, he went straight to the police. My stomach tightened. He filed something? He tried, she said. He attempted to report you as a missing and mentally unstable spouse. He claimed you ran off during an argument and that he fears you're a danger to yourself. I felt heat rise beneath my skin, anger, disbelief, the familiar sting of a tactic I'd lived under for years. He told them that. Jonah growled, pacing once across the room. After leaving her in a storm? Miriam nodded grimly. Gaslighting is his first language. But the police didn't buy it. Your recording has already circulated through preliminary channels. They know he abandoned you. That should have comforted me, but it didn't. Instead, I felt the cold realization of what came next. If he's willing to lie like that, I said, he's losing control. Miriam sat across from me, her voice softening. Losing control men are the most unpredictable. That's why we need to move fast. She opened her briefcase and slid out a stack of folders. The judge moved your next hearing to today. We need to be ready. Today, everything felt like it was happening too quickly, and yet not quickly enough. Years of subtle cruelty, financial manipulation, emotional erasure, now compressed into a storm day sprint toward justice. Jonah placed a hand on my shoulder. We're with you. Every step. I nodded, grounding myself in the support I never had before. The courthouse was busier than yesterday. Word had spread. Reporters hovered at every entrance, hungry for new angles. Some recognized me immediately. Cameras flashed. Voices rose. Mrs. Whitford, is it true he attempted to declare you mentally unstable? Did your husband try to access frozen accounts? Are you prepared to testify in multiple cases? Their questions blurred together like static. I kept my chin high, repeating silently, training is not destiny. Training is not destiny. Inside, the courtroom felt colder. Leonard was already seated at the defendant's table. When he saw me, the fury in his eyes was almost feral. His posture, rigid, forced, told me he'd slept even less than I had. His attorney whispered urgently to him, but Leonard wasn't listening. His gaze stayed locked on me with a hatred that once would have terrified me. Today, it only strengthened my resolve. The judge entered. We are here to address new allegations and review updated evidence. Miriam rose. Your Honor, we have reason to believe Mr. Whitford attempted to fabricate a missing person report to undermine my client's credibility. Additionally, he attempted unauthorized withdrawals from frozen accounts this morning. Leonard's attorney shot up. Your Honor, my client was simply concerned for his wife's safety. He had no knowledge. Sit down, the judge said sharply. I am not entertaining that narrative. Miriam continued, we also have new financial evidence provided by investigators, including offshore activity predating the current filing. She handed over a thick folder. The judge began flipping through it, eyebrows rising higher with each page. Leonard shifted in his seat, jaw tightening. This is extensive, the judge murmured. Mr. Whitford, these figures alone warrant expanded investigation. Leonard's face flushed. Your Honor, she's twisting everything. Clara has a history of, the judge looked up sharply. Finish that sentence carefully, Mr. Whitford. He swallowed hard. She overreacts. She always has. I'm trying to protect her. Protect. That single word struck me like a slap. The same word he used when he cut my credit card access for my own good. The same word he whispered when he isolated me from friends. The same word he leaned on when he told me my memory was slipping, when he moved documents and then swore I'd misplaced them. I stood. May I speak, Your Honor? She nodded. Briefly. I faced the court, my hand steady. For 30 years, Leonard told me he was protecting me. But protection is not control. Protection is not abandonment. Protection is not taking money from accounts I didn't know existed. He didn't protect me. He hid everything from me, finances, decisions, plans. And now he is trying to hide behind the same excuse. Every word felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, pieces he'd scattered over decades. The courtroom was silent. The judge nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Whitford. You may sit. Leonard looked rattled. For once, he didn't speak. Miriam stepped forward. Your Honor, due to his actions today, we request immediate enforcement of the restraining order, as well as authorization for federal investigators to seize all digital devices belonging to Mr. Whitford. Leonard's attorney sputtered, This is excessive, it is appropriate, the judge said coldly. Request granted. The gavel struck. A deputy approached Leonard's table. Sir, we need your phone. Leonard recoiled. You can't take that, it's a court order. The deputy held out his hand again, and for the first time, I saw something flicker across Leonard's face that I had never seen there before. Fear. He placed the phone in the deputy's palm with a trembling grip. The hearing ended, and the room began to buzz with whispers. Reporters leapt from their seats. Leonard's attorney tried to herd him toward the back exit, but Leonard jerked away, shouting my name, Clara. You think this is justice? You think humiliating me makes you strong? I turned slowly. No, I said softly. What makes me strong is finally knowing who I am without you. His mouth opened, but no sound came. Miriam nudged my elbow. Let's go. Outside, the reporters surged, the courthouse steps alive with flashing lights and chattering microphones. But their noise felt distant. Faded. Like an echo from a life I no longer belonged to. Jonah wrapped his arm around me. You did it. Not yet, I whispered. But soon. We walked to the truck through the thinning drizzle, the first hint of sunlight breaking through the clouds. And as I climbed inside, I felt something shift in my chest, something fierce and undeniable. This wasn't just survival, this was transformation, this was the rise before the reckoning, this was the beginning of the end for Leonard Whitford. By the time Jonah and I reached the cabin again, the rain had stopped, leaving the forest wrapped in that quiet, silver haze that always follows a storm. But inside my chest, Another storm churned, slower, deeper, far more dangerous than anything the skies could summon. Jonah locked the cabin door behind us. "He's unraveling faster than expected," he said, setting his keys down with a thud. "Trying to fake a missing person report? Filing claims you're unstable? That's panic behavior." "Yes," I murmured, removing my damp coat. "He's slipping." "Slipping?" Jonah snorted. "No. He's falling." I walked to the window, staring out at the tall pines swaying in the breeze. Their branches shook but didn't break. I envied that strength once, now I felt it growing in my own bones. The soft buzz vibrated on the table. My phone, face down, exactly where Jonah had placed it earlier. For a moment I just stared at it. Every instinct in my body still flinched when it rang, a leftover reaction from years of conditioning. Jonah raised a brow. "You want me to check it?" I nodded. He picked up the phone, glanced at the screen, and his jaw clenched. His mother again. Of course. Helen. The eternal defender of her perfect son. He hit play on the voicemail, and her voice, high, sharp, trembling with practiced indignation, filled the cabin. "Clara, I cannot believe what you're doing to my boy. Leonard is devastated. He says you're refusing to speak to him, that you're with strange people who are manipulating you. Please, call me back. You're destroying your marriage over misunderstandings." I let out a slow breath through my teeth. Jonah pressed delete. "She's part of the problem. She always has been," I whispered. "She raised him to believe every woman exists to orbit around him. And now the orbit is breaking," Jonah said, folding his arms. "That's why she's screaming." I wanted to agree, but a tremor of unease slipped through me. Leonard's tantrums were one thing. His mother's involvement was another. Helen was wealthy, well-connected, and ruthless when protecting her son. She had once called me dramatic for crying after Leonard forgot our anniversary, dismissing my pain as silly emotions. Jonah stepped closer. "Don't spiral. Remember, we have truth on our side. Evidence. Witnesses." Another buzz, another voicemail, but this one wasn't from Helen. Jonah's brows narrowed. "Unknown number." He played it. A male voice, hesitant, nervous, came through. "Mrs. Whitford, my name is Daniel Carter. Leonard managed my retirement account for the past 8 years. I just heard what happened. I think he drained my widow's fund. I wasn't sure who to call, but people online say you're helping others. Please. I don't know what to do." I closed my eyes. This was bigger than me, bigger than the marriage, bigger than the years of manipulation. Leonard wasn't just cruel, he was destructive. Careless with lives. Jonah shut off the voicemail. "You don't have to carry all this tonight." "No," I said quietly. "But how many people has he hurt? How many trusted him? How many didn't notice the missing pieces until it was too late?" Jonah rubbed the back of his neck. "Clara, you can't save everyone." "I know," I whispered. "But I can start somewhere." An hour later, Miriam called with an update. "Clara, we received statements from 2 additional victims. Elderly clients. Both claim Leonard manipulated them into signing documents they didn't understand." My stomach tightened. "He targeted them?" "Yes," she said. "We're noticing a pattern. Widows, retirees, single women, those least likely to question him." My pulse throbbed in my ears. "He's a predator." "A financial predator," she corrected. "But yes. That's the word investigators are using." A thick, cold wave rolled through me. "Tomorrow," Miriam continued, "official charges will expand. You may be asked to provide a recorded statement." "I'll do it." "I figured," she said softly. "Clara, you're doing something extraordinary." Extraordinary. No one had used that word about me in years. Later that evening, Jonah reheated soup on the cabin stove while I sat at the wooden table reviewing more documents. His presence, solid, grounding, kept me tethered. "You eating?" he asked over his shoulder. "Trying," I said, flipping another page. "You need strength tomorrow." I pushed the papers aside. "I know. He slid a bowl in front of me. Then fuel up. I took a bite, warm, comforting, but my mind was already drifting toward the next steps. What if he shows up somewhere unannounced? I asked quietly. Jonah met my gaze. He won't get close. The restraining order is official. If he steps within 500 feet, they'll cuff him. But desperation makes men reckless, I whispered. Jonah leaned across the table. Clara, look at me. I did. Reckless men lose. Prepared women win. A soft laugh escaped me. Where did you hear that? From Mom, he said wistfully. She used to tell us that whenever Dad got difficult. Warmth filled my chest, memories of our mother standing tall in a house filled with storms. She would be proud of this version of me. Night settled over the forest, quiet and thick. The cabin lights glowed softly, casting amber warmth over the wooden walls. I stood at the window, arms wrapped around myself, watching fog roll between the trees. Jonah joined me silently. You okay? I'm thinking. About what? How close I came to never seeing any of this, I said softly. If Leonard hadn't left me in that storm, I might still be there. Shrinking myself. Erasing myself. Jonah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, sometimes it takes the darkest night to reveal the escape route. I felt tears rise, warm and uninvited, not sad tears. Not broken ones, grateful ones, transforming ones, you know, Jonah added with a crooked smile. Most people don't get this kind of awakening. Most people stay stuck forever. I was stuck for 30 years. But you're free now, he said gently. And the freedom's only growing. Just as we were preparing for bed, my phone buzzed with one more message, this time, not a voicemail. A text, from an unknown number. I opened it. Clara, we need to talk. It's about one of Leonard's offshore accounts. He wasn't planning to leave only you behind. My breath hitched. Another message followed instantly. He was planning to run. And he wasn't planning to run alone. A chill darted down my spine. Jonah saw the look on my face. What is it? I handed him the phone, his jaw tightened. Someone knows something. Yes, I whispered. Something big. As he read the message again, a realization settled over me like frost. Leonard's lies weren't just deep, they were wide, and if someone else was part of his plan, then the storm we were preparing for wasn't the final battle. It was merely the eye of it. I closed my eyes, steadying my breath, because whatever came next, I was ready, stronger, sharper, unbreakable, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I felt like I was running toward justice. The text glowed on my phone like a warning flare in the dark. He wasn't planning to leave only you behind. He wasn't planning to run alone. Those words pulsed in my mind long after the screen dimmed. Jonah stood beside me, arms crossed, shoulders tense. Who sent that? He asked, voice low, steady, but I could hear the storm building behind it. I don't know, I whispered. But they know something. Something big. He reached for the phone. We're not answering this yet. Not until Miriam sees it. I nodded, but my thoughts spiraled. If Leonard had been preparing to flee, who was he running with? And why would someone warn me? Jonah paced the cabin in slow, heavy steps, the floor creaking beneath his boots. This could be a trap, he muttered. Or it could be someone scared, someone he threatened. Maybe, I said, sinking into the couch, but it feels honest. Desperate. Jonah knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. Clara. Listen. Whatever this is, we deal with it together. You are not walking into anything alone again. His words wrapped around me like armor. I sighed. I know. But a quiet voice inside whispered that this message wasn't danger, it was a crack in the wall Leonard had built. A thread leading to the larger truth, and I needed that truth. Miriam arrived at the cabin just after sunrise, her hair tied back, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. When she read the text, her jaw clenched. This fits, she murmured, tapping the message. This aligns perfectly with the new financial trail we uncovered last night. I stiffened. New trail? She pulled a folder from her bag. Leonard's offshore activity isn't random. It follows a pattern. He was consolidating assets, not hiding them separately. That means he was preparing for a major move. Jonah leaned forward. Meaning what exactly? Meaning, Miriam said, sliding a document across the table, he was liquidating everything and funneling it into one master account. A run account. The words chilled me. He was going to disappear, I said slowly. Completely. Yes, Miriam whispered. And he wasn't planning to go alone. This message confirms it. My throat tightened. Who? Miriam hesitated. We don't know yet. But investigators are looking into recent communications. Whoever was part of his escape plan may be the same person sending you these messages. I swallowed hard. Why contact me now? Fear, she said simply. Leonard is unraveling. Anyone tied to him might be trying to save themselves. Jonah rubbed his temples. So what's our next move? Miriam straightened. Today, Clara gives her recorded statement. After that, we prepare for the expanded charges. His collapse won't be slow, it will be immediate. A strange sensation washed over me, not relief, not fear, but clarity. The kind that comes when the truth finally breaks the surface after years of drowning. Let's do it, I said. The federal building downtown was colder than the courthouse, sterile, echoing, humming with fluorescent lights and quiet authority. Agents passed through the hallways with clipboards and stern expressions. I sat at a conference table with a microphone in front of me, Jonah to my left, Miriam to my right. A federal investigator, Agent Torres, calm but razor-focused, explained the process. Just tell us your story, he said gently. Speak honestly. We're not here to trap you. We're here to understand the full scope of your husband's actions. My husband, those words felt strange now. Like they belonged to a different lifetime. I took a breath. And then I spoke about the missing money. The cold dismissals. The manipulation disguised as protection. The years he said I couldn't understand our finances. The nights he moved documents. The mornings he made me question my memory. I spoke about the rain-soaked highway. His voice telling me to walk home. The threat disguised as a lesson, and I told them what I had learned, how he had targeted elderly clients. Widows. Lonely retirees. How he drained accounts dollar by dollar, smile by smile. Agent Torres's eyes darkened as he listened. Mrs. Whitford, what you've given us isn't just testimony. It's a map of his crimes. When the recording ended, Jonah squeezed my shoulder. You did good, he whispered, but the room wasn't done. Miriam leaned forward. Agent Torres, what about the message Clara received last night? He tapped his pen, thoughtful. We're tracking the number. It pinged off a tower near the east side of town. Could be someone involved. Could be someone frightened. Either way, they know more than they're saying. I nodded slowly. So what now? Now, he said, you stay cautious. Until we know who sent that message, assume Leonard isn't acting alone. That sentence settled over me like frost. Leonard isn't acting alone, and suddenly the past 30 years felt darker than I remembered. Jonah drove us back through thick morning fog. Pines blurred past the windows like ghosts drifting across the road. He gripped the wheel tight. You okay? He asked quietly. I stared ahead, my voice barely audible. I thought I knew everything he was capable of. But if he was planning to run with someone else, that means there's another layer. Someone who encouraged him. Someone who enabled him. Someone desperate enough to warn you, Jonah added. I turned toward him. You think it's a woman? He hesitated. Could be. Could also be someone he tricked. Leonard manipulates everyone in his orbit, men, women, anyone with something he can use. Then why message me? Because, Jonah said softly, you're the one taking him down. And predators run hardest when they sense another predator hunting them. I opened my mouth to respond, but my phone buzzed again, this time a new message. He lied to both of us. My stomach dropped. Another message. You deserve to know the truth before he twists it. Jonah pulled over instantly, gravel crunching beneath the tires. Don't answer, he warned. Not yet. I stared at the glowing screen, heart pounding. Whoever this was, they weren't trying to hurt me, they were trying to confess. Back at the cabin, the air felt heavy with anticipation. Every creak of the wood sounded sharper. Every shadow seemed to breathe. Miriam joined us within an hour. Investigators traced the number. Whoever's messaging you bought the phone 2 weeks ago. Cash. No ID. Burner phone, Jonah muttered. Yes, Miriam said. Which means this person is scared. Scared of Leonard, I whispered. Or scared of being exposed. Miriam nodded. Either way, you're the safest point of contact. They see you as the one person strong enough to confront him. My pulse hammered. Do you want to respond? She asked. I took a breath. A deep, steadying breath. Yes, I said. I do. Miriam leaned closer. Then we craft a message together. Jonah folded his arms. Keep it simple. I typed slowly, deliberately. Who are you? The reply came almost instantly. Someone he promised a future to. Someone he never planned to keep. My throat tightened. Why tell me? I typed. A pause. Longer this time. Then, because you're the only one he ever feared. My heart slammed against my ribs. Feared me? Before I could respond, another message arrived, and because his plan wasn't to disappear next month. It was to disappear, this week. A chill rippled through me. Miriam's face paled. This changes everything. Jonah stepped closer, his voice a low rumble. Clara, he wasn't running from you. I looked up slowly, breath shaking. He was running from the law, Jonah said. And he was planning to vanish before the charges caught him. And his partner? I whispered. Miriam finished the sentence for him, is realizing he's going down, and wants to save themselves. I sank into the couch, the message still glowing on my screen like a spark ready to ignite the truth, and all I could think was, the storm was far from over, but this time, I wasn't the one trapped in it, I was the one walking straight into it, holding the match. For a long moment, I simply stared at the screen, the final message glowing like a flare in the dark. He was planning to disappear this week. Not someday. Not eventually. Now. My breath caught somewhere between my ribs, suspended like a fragile thread. Jonah paced the cabin, the floor groaning beneath his boots. We need to get ahead of this. If Leonard was planning to bolt in the next few days, investigators need to know. Immediately. Miriam nodded, already pulling out her tablet. I'll alert Agent Torres. This accelerates everything. But I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I felt frozen, not with fear, but with revelation. All these years, all the lies, all the secrets buried beneath his charm and cold smiles, he had always been preparing to leave me, not after the affair, not after the money vanished, not even after he abandoned me in the storm. He had been planning my absence long before that. The truth hit with a hard, hollow thud. I was never part of his future. Not even a shadow. Jonah stopped pacing and knelt beside me. Clara. You're breathing too fast. I shook my head. No, I'm fine. I didn't realize the ending was that close. He squeezed my hand. But he didn't realize you'd rewrite the ending. That forced a small exhale, half laugh, half sob. Miriam's phone buzzed loudly, jolting the silence. She answered instantly. Yes, Agent Torres. She received another message. No, we haven't responded further. Yes, I'll send screenshots. She tapped quickly, then looked up at us with a mix of urgency and concern. Torres wants you at the federal office first thing tomorrow. They're classifying the sender as a potential cooperating witness. Jonah frowned. Or a threat. Both, Miriam admitted. But the tone suggests fear. They're not warning you to hurt you. They're warning you to protect themselves. I folded my arms around my chest. Who would help him run? Who would risk everything? Miriam leaned forward. Someone who loved him. Someone he manipulated. Someone he promised the world to. A sharp sting flashed across my chest. Another affair? Possibly, she said softly. But we can't assume that. Leonard manipulates beyond romance. He manipulates ambition, desperation, weakness, loneliness. He finds the cracks and fills them with illusions. I stared at the messages again, someone he promised a future to. That sentence hit harder than the storm he left me in. Maybe because promises meant something to me, always had. And realizing he'd handed those same promises to another woman, or even multiple women, made my 30 years of devotion feel painfully naive, but the sting quickly sharpened into something else. Resolve. He's not running, I said. Not anymore. Miriam's lips curved into a grim smile. Exactly. The rest of the day passed in tense waves. Jonah cooked, but none of us really ate. Miriam took calls, poring over files and sending updates to Torres. I tried to rest, but every time I closed my eyes I saw the text messages blinking behind my eyelids. By late afternoon, the cabin felt too small, too quiet, too filled with thinking. I stepped outside, letting the cool mountain air fill my lungs. The forest whispered around me, branches shifting, rain droplets falling from tall pines, birds calling faintly from hidden nests. It felt alive. Strong. Steady. Everything Leonard wasn't. Jonah followed me onto the porch, leaning against the railing. You okay? Yes, I said, surprising myself. Actually, yes. You didn't look okay 10 minutes ago. That was shock, I murmured. But it's passing. He watched me carefully. You know, you don't have to face whatever comes next alone. I smiled. I know. And that's what makes me strong. We stood in silence for a while, the forest stretching before us like a quiet promise. Then Jonah cleared his throat. You think the messenger could be that assistant Leonard hired 2 years ago? What was her name? I shook my head. No. He treated her like an inconvenience. She quit because he made her cry every week. Then who? I don't know yet, I whispered. But they know things only someone close to him could know. Jonah's jaw flexed. Then we'll let the investigators drag them into the light. That night, a storm rolled in again, lighter than the last, but enough to rattle the windows. I sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, sipping tea. Jonah insisted I drink. Miriam reviewed documents beside me. Clara, I need to prepare you. For what? She paused, meeting my eyes. When someone like Leonard falls, the people tied to him fall too. That means more names, more secrets, more betrayals. This message is only the beginning. I swallowed the knot forming in my throat. I can handle it. Good, she said gently, because soon investigators will start questioning his inner circle. And whatever comes out, might hurt. Hurt. The word landed softly, but the meaning struck deep. I nodded. I'm not afraid of the truth. Then you're already winning. I fell asleep on the couch, exhaustion finally claiming me. I dreamed of rain, heavy, relentless, but cleansing. A storm that washed away the past instead of drowning me in it. I woke to Jonah shaking my shoulder gently. You need to see this, he whispered. My heart jolted. What happened? He held out my phone. Another message sent at 3 a.m. He lied about why he wanted to leave. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the marriage. It was what he did at his firm. My pulse hammered. Another message arrived before my eyes could move. And if the investigators find out what he covered up, he'll take me down with him. Then, meet me. Please. I'll tell you everything. My breath hitched. They want to meet? Jonah tensed. Absolutely not. Miriam took the phone, reading quickly. Her face hardened. This person is desperate. Cornered. They might be our missing link. Or a trap, Jonah snapped, or a key witness. Miriam shot back. I stood, legs shaky but head clear. No meeting. Not alone. Not yet. Correct, Miriam said. But this, she tapped the screen, this changes the case. We bring this to Torres immediately. Jonah exhaled sharply. Good. Because nobody meets Clara without protection. I stared out the window at the awakening forest, the first touch of dawn lighting the mist between trees. Somewhere out there was the person who had sent those messages, someone who believed Leonard could destroy them, someone who feared the truth as much as they needed it to be known. I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the steady thud beneath my palm. Whatever the truth was, I was strong enough now to face it. Because he no longer controlled the narrative. I did, and the story wasn't finished, not even close. Morning unfolded slowly over the mountains, brushing pale gold across the pines as if the world had no idea my entire life was tilting toward another seismic shift. I stood on the porch, arms wrapped around myself, watching the mist rise from the earth like spirits freed from long-forgotten battles. Jonah joined me, a mug of coffee in each hand. "You didn't sleep," he said gently, handing me one. "No," I admitted, sipping the warmth. I kept thinking about the messages. About the person behind them. He leaned against the railing, his shoulders tight with the kind of tension that comes from protecting someone you love. "They want to meet you because they're scared. Scared people do stupid things. Desperate things. Or honest things," I whispered. He didn't respond, because we both knew it could be any of those. The cabin door swung open behind us, and Miriam stepped out, hair pulled back, coat already on, always the first one prepared for war. "Agent Torres wants us at the office within the hour," she said. "He thinks the sender might be linked to a much bigger piece of Leonard's scheme." I steadied myself. "Then we go." The federal office buzzed with controlled chaos. Phones rang, agents moved quickly, files exchanged hands like weapons. Torres led us into a small conference room where a large board had been set up, covered in documents, timelines, photographs, bank statements. At the center, Leonard's picture, around it, arrows, notes, connections, like a dark galaxy mapping the gravity of his sins. Torres tapped the board. "Last night's messages helped confirm what we suspected. Leonard wasn't acting alone. Someone inside his circle helped him structure the offshore accounts. Someone who expected to disappear with him." Miriam folded her arms. "The sender said Leonard lied to them. That means they're turning." "That's our hope," Torres replied. "But it also means they're afraid enough to ask for a meeting." Jonah frowned. "We're not letting Clara meet a stranger who enabled him." Torres raised a calming hand. "We won't allow that either. We'll handle any meeting. But we need Clara to answer one question." He looked at me directly, his gaze steady, assessing. "Mrs. Whitford, is there anyone at all, who comes to mind? Someone close to your husband. Someone he confided in. Someone who might have believed he'd take them with him." I swallowed hard. A slow dread crept into my stomach. Faces flickered in my mind, colleagues, employees, distant acquaintances, women he spoke to too kindly, men he spoke to too often. But one face rose above the rest like a shadow splitting from the dark. Marissa Caldwell. Leonard's longtime financial assistant. Soft-spoken. Brilliant. Loyal to a fault. She worshipped him, admired him, defended him, and he knew it. I felt my pulse spike. "There was someone," I whispered. "A woman at his office. Marissa. She handled his private accounts." Torres nodded slowly. "We've been looking into her. She resigned abruptly 2 weeks ago. No forwarding address. No digital footprint since." Jonah's jaw clenched. "That could be her." "Yes," Torres said quietly. "It could." My chest tightened. She always seemed lost around him. Like she waited for him to see her. "And maybe he told her he did," Miriam murmured. I sank back in my chair. The betrayal wasn't romantic, it was devastating in a different way. Women like Marissa didn't want to destroy families. They wanted to be chosen. They wanted to matter, and Leonard weaponized that desire. Torres continued, "We're tracking the phone. If she reaches out again, we'll intercept the signal. But Clara, your voice might be the thing that convinces her to come forward." Jonah stiffened. "Absolutely not." I touched his arm gently. "Jonah, if she can help take him down, she deserves a chance to speak." He looked at me long and hard. "Just promise me you won't do anything alone." "I promise." We left the federal office, the weight of the morning settling over us like thick fog. The truck ride was quiet until Miriam finally broke the silence. If it's Marissa, she's in deeper than she realizes, she said. He used her. Manipulated her. When he planned to vanish, he probably dangled the idea of a new life. No consequences. Until consequences showed up at his door, Jonah muttered. I stared at the passing trees. And now that he's falling, she's terrified. Exactly, Miriam said. She may be the key to proving the full conspiracy. The thought struck me with a mix of pity and righteous fury. Marissa might be a victim, but she also helped him hurt people. Helped him steal. Helped him destroy, yet my heart softened. Because women conditioned by powerful men don't see the trap until it snaps shut, I knew that feeling too well. We reached the cabin just as another message arrived. My phone buzzed in my hand. Jonah tensed, eyes darting to the screen. I can't sleep, it read. He promised he'd protect me. He said you wouldn't matter. A deep ache pulled up my chest. I typed slowly. You were misled. I understand. Tell me what you know. 3 dots appeared instantly. Then, not here. Too risky. There's a place he used to meet with clients. A coffee shop near the river. Back room. Noon tomorrow. Jonah exploded. No. Absolutely not. Forget it. Miriam agreed. This is too dangerous. But Torres, once informed, sent a different message back through Miriam. We accept the meeting. But with agents in place. Clara will not be exposed. When Miriam relayed it, Jonah still looked like he might punch through a wall. I touched his arm. Jonah, this could be what ends it. Completely. He exhaled through clenched teeth. I hate this. I know, I whispered. But I don't feel fear, Jonah. Not anymore. He met my eyes. Then I'll feel it for you. The next day arrived thick with tension. Gray skies hovered low, heavy with the promise of another storm. We drove to the riverfront cafe, its windows fogged, its wooden sign swaying gently in the wind. Torres and his team were already positioned inside and outside, disguised as ordinary customers. Jonah escorted me to the entrance, every muscle in his body coiled tight. You stay behind me, he ordered. I know, I whispered. Inside, the cafe smelled of roasted coffee and rain-damp jackets. The back room was dim, lit only by a single lamp in the corner. Torres guided us in, then we heard it, a soft shuffle. A breath. The smallest sound of someone mustering courage. A woman stepped from behind the doorway, hair disheveled, eyes red from crying, face pale with fear. I knew her instantly. Marissa, I breathed. She flinched at the sound of her name, her hands trembling. I didn't know who else to turn to, she whispered. He promised he'd take me with him. That he'd protect me. And then, he abandoned me too. My heartbeat slowed, not out of pity but understanding, because in that moment, I saw her clearly, not as the other woman, not as an accomplice, but as another victim of Leonard Whitford. A woman who, like me, had been told she was small and was finally realizing she wasn't. I'll tell you everything, she said, tears spilling down her face. Just please, help me before he destroys me too. And I knew, this was the turning point, the moment the tide shifted irreversibly, the moment truth stepped out of the shadows, the moment Leonard's empire truly began to crumble. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The tiny back room of the cafe felt too quiet, too fragile, like the truth Marissa carried might shatter if anyone breathed too loudly. She stood in front of me, her hands trembling so violently she had to clasp them together just to steady herself. Rain-soaked strands of hair clung to her cheeks, and her eyes, wide, haunted, searching, looked at me as if I were the last lifeline she had left. Marissa, I said softly, taking a cautious step closer, you're safe here. Her chin quivered. I don't feel safe. Not anywhere. Jonah positioned himself slightly in front of me, instinctively shielding me. Torres raised a calming hand, keeping the space steady, controlled. We're here to protect you, he said. But we need the truth. At that, Marissa broke, not dramatically. Not loudly. But in the quiet, devastating way a woman collapses after holding the world on her shoulders for far too long. Tears streamed silently down her face as she pressed a shaking hand against her mouth. He lied to me, she whispered. He lied about everything. I nodded. Yes. He lied to all of us. Her eyes shot toward mine, pained but grateful. Because only another woman who had survived Leonard's emotional labyrinth could understand that betrayal in its sharpest form. She sank into a chair, shoulders folding inward. Torres sat across from her with his notepad ready. Start from the beginning, he said gently. Marissa swallowed hard. I met Leonard 8 years ago when I started at the firm. He noticed me right away. He made me feel capable. Seen. Valuable. A hollow ache twisted inside my chest. I had fallen for that tone once too, his way of making praise feel like sunlight you craved more of. At first, she continued, it was professional. But then he started calling me after hours. Asking my advice on things that weren't part of my job. Telling me I understood him in ways no one else did. Jonah muttered under his breath, classic manipulation. Marissa flinched. I didn't know it was wrong. Not at first. I thought he trusted me. That he needed me. Her hands twisted in her lap. He said his marriage was suffocating him. That you, she looked at me, regret flooding her face, didn't appreciate his brilliance. Pain flickered inside me, but not because her words hurt. They didn't. Not anymore. I had become immune to his myths. But hearing her repeat them reminded me how far his cruelty could reach. Torres leaned forward. When did it become financial? Her shoulders tensed. 3 years ago. He showed me an account he said he wanted to protect from company oversight. He told me it was temporary, that he didn't trust the board. He swore it wasn't illegal. That was the first offshore account, Torres said. Yes, she whispered. And then more followed. And then the transfers. The older clients. The forged signatures. She looked at me, eyes filled with shame. I knew it wasn't right. But he said he'd fix everything. He said he'd take me away before anyone found out. Take you where? Miriam asked. Costa Rica, she said. He said he'd bought property there. That we'd start new identities in a few months. Jonah scoffed. He was feeding you the same fantasy criminals feed anyone they're using. Marissa's face crumpled. I know that now. I know I was stupid. No, I said quickly, firmly. You were groomed. Manipulated. Controlled, the same way he controlled me. That isn't stupidity. That's survival in a trap you didn't realize you were in. Her tears came harder, but this time there was relief mixed in. Torres tapped his pen. Marissa, what changed? Why reach out to Clara? She inhaled shakily. Because the night he abandoned you, he came to see me afterward. Every head in the room snapped toward her. What? I whispered. She nodded miserably. He showed up at my apartment. Wet. Angry. Shaking. He said you were finally out of the way and we needed to accelerate the plan. My blood chilled. Accelerate what? He said we had 1 week, Marissa continued. That federal eyes were on him and that he needed more money. He told me to start transferring the last funds out of client accounts. Did you? Torres asked sharply. Marissa burst into sobs. No. I couldn't. I panicked. I told him I was sick. I told him I needed time. And how did he respond? Miriam asked. He screamed. Said I owed him loyalty. Said he'd erase me if I betrayed him. I closed my eyes. That phrasing, so familiar. Leonard wielded words like weapons sharpened over years of practice. After he left, Marissa whispered, I realized he wasn't planning to take me. He wasn't planning to take anyone. He was leaving alone. And he was willing to let all of us burn. And that's when you messaged Clara, Torres said. Yes, she breathed. Because she was the only one he ever feared. I blinked. Feared? She nodded, wiping her cheeks. He always spoke about you like you were a problem he couldn't control. Not weak. Not stupid. A threat. He said you had dangerous intuition. He said you saw things he didn't want seen. Jonah stared at me in shock. You never said any of that. Because he never said any of it to me, I whispered. Marissa straightened, trembling but resolute. He underestimated you. And I think, he always knew that would be his downfall. The room fell silent. Torres cleared his throat. Marissa, if you're willing to testify, you could help dismantle his entire operation. She nodded, tears still falling. I'll testify. I'll give you everything. Then she turned to me. I'm sorry, she whispered. For every lie. Every transfer. Every blind moment. I'm sorry for believing him. I walked toward her slowly, then knelt beside her chair. There is a long line of women who have been broken by men like Leonard, I said softly. But I refuse to be part of the line that stays broken. And I refuse to let you stay there either. She sobbed again, but this time the sound held something healing. A release. A beginning. Torres coordinated her protective placement immediately. 2 agents escorted her out the back door, wrapped in safety protocols. When she left, Jonah exhaled. Well. That's it. This is the nail in his coffin. No, Miriam said, folding her arms with a knowing smile. This is the hammer. I felt a deep, steady strength rise through me. Marissa had given investigators everything they needed, and I had become something Leonard never foresaw, the storm that would wash him away, the voice he couldn't silence, the woman he never broke. Tomorrow, they would arrest him. Tomorrow, the consequences he evaded for years would finally reach him. Tomorrow, the reckoning would begin. And I would walk into it not as the abandoned wife, but as the architect of his downfall. The morning of Leonard's arrest began with a silence so deep it felt sacred. No rain. No wind. Just a stillness wrapping the cabin like the world itself was pausing, waiting. I stood by the window, watching the first threads of sunlight slip between the pines. After everything, after storms, lies, betrayals, courtroom battles, this sunrise felt different. It wasn't soft. It wasn't gentle. It felt earned. Behind me, Jonah poured coffee, the clinking of mugs grounding the moment. You ready? He asked. I turned toward him, not with fear, not with doubt, but with a clarity I hadn't known in decades. Yes. I'm finally ready. Miriam arrived moments later, coat buttoned tight, eyes fierce like a woman carrying justice in her briefcase. Federal agents have the warrant, she said. They'll pick him up within the hour. Jonah cracked his knuckles. About time. But I didn't smile. Not out of pity or softness. No. I stood in quiet strength, knowing the moment wasn't about revenge. It was about truth, about reclaiming the life he tried so hard to shrink. We drove to the federal building where cameras already lined the street. Reporters whispered, shifting their equipment, waiting like hawks sensing the tremor of something monumental. When Leonard arrived, escorted by 2 agents, the air cracked like glass. He looked nothing like the man I once married. His hair was unkempt, his jaw tight, his confidence shattered. The arrogant composure he had carried like armor for decades was gone, stripped clean by his own choices. When he saw me standing on the sidewalk, he froze, not in anger, not in fury, but in disbelief. He mouthed something, maybe my name. Maybe one last manipulation. I didn't care enough to decipher it. Agents placed handcuffs around his wrists. For the first time in 30 years, I witnessed something I never thought possible. Leonard Whitford finally understood he could no longer hurt me. He was no longer the storm. I was inside the federal office. Torres briefed us on next steps. Marissa had provided every document, every password, every late-night phone call he thought no one knew about. Dozens of victims were now protected. Multiple lawsuits were underway. You helped expose a network, Torres said. Your case isn't just one of survival, Mrs. Whitford. It's a turning point. I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of that statement. A turning point. My suffering, years of it, had carved a path for others to escape. A strange mixture of pride and grief rose in my chest. Pride for the woman I had become. Grief for the woman I used to be. I breathed through both, letting them settle side by side, because both were true, because both mattered. Later that afternoon, I returned to the cabin while Jonah and Miriam handled paperwork. I needed the quiet. I needed to face something alone, the version of myself who once believed Leonard was the sun and she was the shadow. I walked into the bedroom and opened the small bag I had brought the night of the storm. Inside was the coat I wore when he left me 37 miles from home. Rain-soaked, heavy, clinging with the memory of abandonment, I lifted it gently. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't reliving pain, I was reclaiming power. I folded the coat, placed it in a box, sealed the top, and wrote a single word before. Then I placed it on the shelf and whispered goodbye, not to Leonard, not to the marriage, but to the woman who thought she needed to be saved. Because she had saved herself. By evening, the sky glowed orange as the sun sank behind the mountains. Jonah grilled dinner outside, humming softly. Miriam read on the porch. The world felt simple, gentle again, and I felt reborn. But the day wasn't finished. My phone buzzed with a notification. A news alert: former hedge fund manager Leonard Whitford faces multiple charges including fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. I clicked the video. The reporter spoke over footage of Leonard being led into custody. Then she said something that made me sit straighter. Sources confirm the whistleblower who initiated the investigation is his own spouse. Whistleblower spouse survivor Hunter reborn. I closed the phone and stepped onto the porch. Done watching the enemy fall? Jonah teased lightly. I smiled. I'm not watching him fall. I'm watching myself rise. Miriam, without looking up from her book, whispered, that's the real victory. That night, I lay in bed listening to the quiet hum of insects instead of the thundering storms that had echoed through my life for so long. The darkness didn't feel threatening anymore. It felt like rest, healing. A place where new beginnings rooted themselves in the soil of old wounds. And that's when the final truth settled into my bones. Everything Leonard tried to destroy in me, he had only revealed. My strength. My intuition. My voice. My future. As I drifted towards sleep, a message formed in my heart. One meant for every woman who had been silenced, minimized, or made to feel small. You are never too old to start over, never too broken to rebuild, never too lost to be found again, and the person who finds you might be you. My story didn't end in the storm where Leonard left me. It began there, because sometimes the moment someone tries to break you is the very moment you learn you were unbreakable all along. Life will test you with storms you didn't cause. People will betray you in ways you never imagined. But power does not come from avoiding the storm. It comes from surviving it, and choosing to rise anyway. No matter your age, your scars, or your past, you can rewrite your story, you can rebuild your life, and you can become stronger than the person who tried to silence you. Let my journey remind you, you deserve better, you deserve safety, you deserve freedom, and you deserve a life that feels like yours. If you're standing in your own storm right now, hold on. Your sunrise is coming. My next chapter won't be defined by pain, it will be defined by purpose, helping others, building the Phoenix Foundation, turning my survival into someone else's lifeline, because the greatest revenge isn't watching someone fall. It's choosing to rise, and lifting others with you. If my story touched something inside you, if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated, then don't face the storm alone. Join a community of women rising from the ashes, stronger than ever. Hit subscribe right now so you never miss another story of courage, justice, and rebirth. Your story matters, your voice matters, and together, we'll rewrite every ending they tried to control. Subscribe, share this video, and leave a comment telling me the moment you realized your worth. Your next chapter starts today.